My name is Catherine, and I'm a web developer. I use HTML every day to build websites. Now that you know more about content and how it relates to building a website, we're going to show you how to use HTML to give that content more structure. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Just like spoken languages, English, French, Spanish, Italian, there are different languages to pursue when making a website. HTML is one of those languages. HTML is a computer language, also referred to as code, and it is used to create websites by giving structure to the content. When using HTML, we often say we're marking up our text. This is just another way of saying we're giving our content meaning. This code might look confusing now, but once we're done, you'll understand exactly what is going on. The browser, think Safari or Chrome, doesn't know what to do with plain text. Plain text is text without markup. We need to help the browser out by adding HTML. An HTML tag is a coded letter or word wrapped in a pair of angle brackets. A pair of opening and closing tags and the content within them are called an HTML element. This is an example of a paragraph element. It has two p tags wrapped around a paragraph of text. In the example here, the opening tag tells the browser that this is the start of a paragraph. The closing tag tells the browser the paragraph has ended. This is how the browser reads the paragraph element we just wrote. Headings are another type of element that tells the browser how to treat the title of a section. There are 6 heading tags available, H1 being the highest level and H6 being the lowest level. This is how those heading elements look on the browser. They might look just like your paragraph tags, but now the browser knows what the level of importance each heading has. Here are a couple headings, an H1 and 2 H2s, along with 2 paragraphs. Think about it like writing a report at school. The title of your report would be NASA Astronauts, and each section of the report could have a subtitle, such as How to Become an Astronaut. We put the title, the most important part, in an H1 tag, and the less important subtitles in H2 tags. The supporting paragraphs live under the subtitles in the paragraph tags. And here is our marked up text in the browser. Once again, everything looks like plain text, but our browser knows what is going on behind the scenes. A block quote element is a great way to identify that a bit of text is a quotation. For this, we'll use the block quote tag and put the quote inside. Here's the rendered block quote. Let's talk about lists next. Making lists can be handy for certain types of content. Let's say we are marking up a list of qualifications for becoming an astronaut. It wouldn't make sense to code all of the qualifications as a single paragraph. That would be too difficult to read. It also wouldn't make sense if each item was a unique paragraph because lists aren't always sentences. We can create a list with a special list element. In this case, we are using an unordered list element with a UL tag. Inside our unordered list tags, we will want to include the actual content. This content here, qualifications for becoming an astronaut, is a list item, LI, and lives inside its own LI tag. The list items are nested in between the opening and closing UL tags. Nesting means that we have elements that live between the opening and closing tags of another element. These elements are nested, are called child elements, and the element they're nested in is called the parent element. Any child element must have both opening and closing tags inside of a parent element's opening and closing tags. So all LI tags must be closed before we add the closing UL tag. You might notice that the list elements are indented a little. This is to make it easier to read the code. Now the browser understands these things are related, that they're part of a list. The unordered list that we just made is called an unordered list for a reason. The order of the list elements doesn't really matter. You can also make ordered lists where the order does matter using an OL tag. If qualifications to become an astronaut were steps, which we've included in this example, steps to become an astronaut, then the order of the list is important, so we would use an OL tag. This is how the browser renders the marked up text. When building websites, you may want to reference another page. We can connect pages by using an anchor element, also called a link. The text that is in between the A tags will be clickable text on your website. This isn't a finished link though. We need to tell the link where to go. How do we tell the link where to go? With an attribute. Attributes are special settings that a tag can have. Inside the angle brackets in the opening A tag is an href attribute. Href stands for Hypertext Reference. There are many different attributes available, but they all follow the same rules. You have an attribute name, followed by an equal sign, and then a value between quotation marks. In this case, the value is a website address or URL. The href attribute is set equal to the URL the link text should visit when clicked. So this example says when you click on Read More About NASA, you will be sent to nasa.gov. Some attributes are optional while others are required. The href attribute for an anchor tag is required. Here is that link in the browser. Sometimes you might want to include a picture on your website. To do this, we use an image element. This is an image element which will place a single image on your website. Elements can have multiple attributes, each separated by a space. The SRC or source attribute is set to equal the file path or URL to the image. The alt or alternative text attribute contains a description of the image. This text will be displayed if the image doesn't load for some reason. Both the SRC and alt attributes for an image tag are required. One thing you might notice about the image tag is that it doesn't have an opening and closing tag. This is an example of a self-closing element. Since the file path for the image is set by the source attribute, there is no content for an opening and closing tag to wrap around. Self-closing elements have the closing slash before the second angle bracket. And here's the image. For reference, we have this handy HTML cheat sheet that shows more commonly used HTML elements and the attributes you can apply to them. As you start marking up your content, you might notice that some elements will be rendered on their own line, such as heading and paragraph elements, while others will wrap with text, such as image and link elements. Each tag is either an inline or block element. Block elements are like building blocks. They stack one on top of the other like boxes. Inline elements, on the other hand, will flow next to another inline elements on the same line. Inline elements may be nested inside of block elements, but not the other way around. Remember when we were thinking about different types of content we wanted on our website at the very beginning of this workshop? We also want to think about the different ways to lay it out. After your content is marked up and has meaning, you'll want to start grouping different types of content. Common groups of content, or sections of a website, include header, navigation, footer, body text, and sidebar. HTML provides special container elements to help define these groups. Most containers care about the content that is nested inside of it. You would wrap a nav tag around your navigation links. The footer of your website will live inside a footer tag. You can also nest container elements. An article element may contain a header element, which can contain the article's H1 tag. You can usually tell what content should be nested inside of a container element based on the container's name. Sometimes you just need a container that doesn't have a meaning associated with it. That is where generic containers are handy. We have two generic containers in this example, a div element and a span element. The div tag is a block level element, while the span is an inline element. Let's go back to that first slide with confusing code. Looking at it now, you should have a better idea of what is going on in HTML. Now have some fun marking up your content. Now that we've walked through gathering content for our site and giving our content structure with HTML, let's talk about design.